I need you to understand something. I was sitting in a coffee shop wearing a turtleneck in 87-degree weather, holding a leather-bound notebook I didn't know how to use, pretending to read poetry I didn't understand, and that's when it hit me. I had become a parody of myself. Let me back up. How it started. So about 2 months ago, I fell into a TikTok rabbit hole. You know the one. It's 11 p.m., you're lying in bed, and suddenly you're watching your 47th video of people with perfect lighting, wearing oversized vintage sweaters, sipping coffee from ceramic mugs, and looking pensively out of rainy windows while classical music plays in the background. It's the dark academia aesthetic. Gah. And let me tell you, it looked amazing. These people looked like they were living in a moody indie film where every moment was profound and every outfit told a story. They had lives that looked like they smelled like old books and expensive coffee. They looked smart, mysterious, put together. And I was wearing the same hoodie I'd been wearing for 3 days. Eating cereal directly from the box, watching these videos on a phone screen covered in fingerprints. So naturally, I thought, I should be that. I should transform myself into a dark academia icon. How hard could it be? Spoiler alert, very hard. The planning phase. I went all in, and I mean ALL, in. I made a Pinterest board with 247 pins. I watched YouTube videos titled, How to Dress Dark Academia on a Budget and Transform Your Life with This Aesthetic. I followed Instagram accounts that posted photos of libraries and vintage typewriters and people dramatically holding candles. I convinced myself this wasn't just about clothes. This was a lifestyle, a mindset, whole new me. I made a shopping list. Turtlenecks. Lots of turtlenecks. Oversized blazers. Vintage sweaters. Brown and beige everything. A leather satchel. Wireframe glasses, even though my vision is perfect. A fountain pen because apparently ballpoint pens are for people without depth. And books. I needed books that looked smart. Not books I'd actually read, books that would look good in the background of photos. So I went to a thrift store and bought 7 hardcover books I'd never heard of. One was in French. I don't speak French. Didn't matter. It looked intellectual. I spent $340 on an aesthetic for social media. That should have been my first red flag, but I was in too deep. The transformation, the packages started arriving. And let me tell you, the first time I put on that outfit, I felt incredible. I looked in the mirror and thought, yes, this is it. This is who I was meant to be. I was wearing a cream turtleneck, a brown oversized blazer, straight-leg khaki pants, and brown leather boots. I had my new satchel, a Teve. I'd styled my hair differently, kind of swoopy and intentionally messy. I looked like I was about to discuss philosophy at an Ivy League university. I felt sophisticated, refined, like I'd finally figured out who I was. That feeling lasted approximately 4 hours. The first cracks. Turns out, turtlenecks are insanely uncomfortable. Like, who decided that the best way to look smart was to strangle yourself with fabric? I couldn't turn my head properly. I felt like I was being slowly suffocated by my own clothing choices. And the blazer, it was wool, heavy wool. In July. I live in a place where summer is not a suggestion, it's an aggressive, relentless force of nature. And I'm walking around dressed like I'm attending a Victorian funeral. But I committed. I posted a photo on Instagram with the caption "Lost in Thought," even though I was actually just thinking about how sweaty I was. That felt like validation. So, I kept going. The library incident, I decided I needed to complete the aesthetic by actually going to places where dark academia people go. Libraries, coffee, shops, bookstores. Places where I could look thoughtful and mysterious. So I went to the public library. I found a corner with good lighting, arranged my laptop, my leather notebook, my fountain pen, and one of my decorative French books. I positioned everything perfectly. I even brought my reusable coffee cup from home because I needed a prop. And then I just sat there because I didn't actually have anything to do. I wasn't studying. I wasn't writing. I was just existing aesthetically. A woman sitting across from me kept glancing over. At first, I thought, she's probably impressed by my vibe. But then I realized she was looking at me like I was performing some kind of weird ritual. Because, essentially, I was. I tried to look busy. I opened the French book. Couldn't read it. I picked up the fountain pen. Didn't know what to write. I stared thoughtfully out the window. There was a parking lot. Not exactly inspiring. After 20 minutes, I left. I'd accomplished nothing except making myself feel ridiculous. The coffee shop breakdown. But the real moment, the moment I knew I'd made a mistake, was the coffee shop incident. I'd planned it perfectly. I found this cute little independent coffee shop that had the exact vibe I needed. Exposed brick walls, warm lighting, big windows, wooden tables. It was perfect. I was going to get an espresso, sit by the window, write in my leather notebook, and finally become the person I'd been pretending to be. I walked in wearing my full outfit, turtleneck, blazer, satchel, the whole deal. It was 87 degrees outside. I was already sweating through the turtleneck before I even ordered. I got to the counter and ordered an espresso because that felt like the right choice. The barista said, "Just a single espresso." Kana said, "Yes, that's perfect, even though I don't even like espresso. I usually get iced coffee with oat milk and 2 pumps of vanilla, but that didn't fit the aesthetic." I paid $4 for a drink the size of a shot glass. I found a table by the window. Arranged everything. Notebook, fountain pen. Phone positioned for candid photos that I'd secretly been taking of myself. I took a sip of the espresso. It was so bitter I almost spit it out. But I forced myself to keep a neutral, contemplative expression. And then I tried to write. With the fountain pen, which I'd never actually used before. It didn't write. I pressed harder. Still nothing. I shook it a little. Booming, exploded everywhere. All over my hand. Over the cream-colored turtleneck. All over the expensive leather notebook. Hello, looked like I'd murdered a pen. I tried to casually wipe it off, but fountain pen ink does not wipe off. It smears, it spreads, it makes everything worse. And that's when I looked up and saw my reflection in the window. I was sitting there, covered in ink, wearing a wool turtleneck in summer, holding a tiny cup of espresso I hated, surrounded by props I didn't use, pretending to be someone I wasn't, and I looked miserable. Genuinely, visibly miserable. A guy at the next table was wearing cargo shorts and a t-shirt, drinking a large iced latte, scrolling through his phone without a care in the world. He looked comfortable, happy, real, and I realized I'd spent $340 and 2 months of effort to make myself actively more uncomfortable. The walk of shame. I packed up everything, threw away the espresso I hadn't finished, and walked out of that coffee shop like I was fleeing a crime scene. I walked 3 blocks in the blazing heat, sweating through every layer of my aesthetic persona, and I could feel the turtleneck clinging to my neck like a fabric prison. When I got home, I peeled off the turtleneck, literally peeled it because sweat had glued it to my skin. I threw the blazer on the floor. I changed into basketball shorts and an old t-shirt, and I felt like I could breathe again. I looked at all the dark academia stuff I'd bought. The turtlenecks, the blazers, the books I'd never read, the leather satchel, the wireframe glasses I'd never worn because I felt like a fraud the moment I put them on. And I just started laughing because the whole thing was absurd. What I learned. Here's the thing about aesthetics. They look amazing in 15-second video clips with perfect lighting and editing. They look amazing when someone else is living them authentically because it actually matches who they are. But when you force yourself into an aesthetic that doesn't fit, you're not upgrading your life. You're just making yourself uncomfortable for the approval of strangers on the internet. I'd spent so much time trying to look like I was living a certain kind of life that I forgot to actually live my life. I was performing, and performances are exhausting, especially when no one asked for a show. The truth is, I don't like turtlenecks. I don't like espresso. I don't want to spend my afternoons pretending to read French poetry. I like hoodies. I like iced coffee with oat milk. I like reading fantasy novels and watching dumb YouTube videos and wearing shorts in the summer like a normal person. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's who I am. The aftermath. I returned what I could. I donated the rest. I kept one sweater because it's actually pretty comfortable when it's not 87 degrees out. But everything else, gone. I deleted the Pinterest board. I unfollowed the aesthetic accounts. I stopped trying to curate my life for people who didn't care. And you know what? I'm way happier now. Back to wearing clothes that don't suffocate me. I actually enjoy. I'm reading books I want to read instead of books that look good in photos. I still see those dark academia videos sometimes, and they still look cool. But now I can appreciate them without feeling like I need to become them, because they're not me. And that's fine. So if you've ever tried to force yourself into a trend that didn't fit, if you've ever spent money on an aesthetic you couldn't maintain, if you've ever sat somewhere uncomfortable just to look cool, you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me what trend you tried and failed at. Let's normalize being ourselves instead of performing for the algorithm. Because at the end of the day, the best aesthetic is the one where you can actually breathe. Trust me on this one.